What is the kind of average salary rise you are expected to get or companies are expected to give this year? So salary surveys usually are put out in the beginning of the calendar year. The Aon India survey is quite well watched out for. And according to this, you are going to see an average of 9.5% increase in salary in 2024. Now, remember, this is still a slight drop from what the actual increases were in 2023 at 9.7%. What is the breakup of this? Which are the sectors which are likely to pay better? To speak more on that, I'm joined now by Roopank. Roopank Chaudhury is Partner Talent Solutions India Aon. Roopank, great to have you here on NDTV Profit. Let's begin by understanding why we are seeing this slight drop in the average salary compared to 2023 and which sectors are going to actually reduce their average salaries.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here. Yes, you're right. The number has dipped a little from last year, but if you go back a year before, in 2022, the number was more than 10% when we had seen double digit. It dropped to 9.7 last year and dropped further this year. I think there are a couple of reasons why we are seeing this marginal dip. The business sentiment has waned in some sectors, and these are largely some of the services sectors, largely driven by technology, IT consulting services, and that's a large chunk of the workforce. And when the salary increases had also gone up high in the last 2 years, it was largely driven by the tech sector as well. So it's but obvious that when the tech sector is seeing recessionary winds and is on the wane, we have also seen the business sentiment come down, and as a result, the salary increments also have been coming down. Some of the other services sectors also continue to show a slight downward projection. If you look at retail, if you look at e-commerce, they're also talking about a slight lower number than last year. On the other hand, core sectors, more traditional sectors like manufacturing, engineering, FMCD, life sciences, auto, chemicals, they've either maintained the salary increase that we had seen last year or in some cases even gone higher up. That's largely been driven by the business sentiment in these core sectors, the business growth, and also the focus on domestic consumption and spending. So there is clearly coming out to be a divide between some globally impacted services sectors, which are projecting downwards, and some of the locally facing manufacturing sectors, which are hiring, which are doing well, which have a better business sentiment and are also looking at a salary projection upwards.
Interesting. And now inside the tech space, Roopank, because you talked about it, product companies or product jobs are going to get a slightly higher increase than services. And you're right to put it in perspective because you saw a huge, poaching, attrition rates, etc. right after COVID. So the base is also higher. Do you expect the trend to move downwards, though, and the difference in these two segments within the tech space?
So, we have to again go back to what happened, I think, the last 2 years. I think there was a lot of buoyancy, and I think companies went overboard when they were hiring. There was this whole great resignation. People had multiple offers. There were high premiums being paid. A lot of this hiring was happening for projects and for work which didn't come in, and it went into excess capacity, excess hiring. As a result, we saw some layoffs. We also saw some bit of right sizing that happened, and companies obviously cutting down heavily on cost. I think what we are seeing in the tech space is some of the organizations which are large scale in nature are cutting down on cost and becoming far more frugal. Some in the mid segment or the smaller segment are still giving high increases because they're still hiring people. So I think we are seeing a bit of a divide within the sector between large companies and small companies. And then obviously the second sort of divide is between the three separate subsectors. For example, if you look at technology platform and products, that number has fallen from 9.9 to 9.5, but that's not so much of a dip. If you look at tech consulting and services, that number has fallen from 9.1 to 8.2. That's almost 1% down. So that's obviously a big change, and that tech consulting and services also has been impacted globally. So that's, I think, one big part. If you look at global capability centers, the GCC, that has fallen marginally from 10.1 to 9.8 because there is still a lot of work coming the way of India. So I think one is that sectors which have more orientation or dependence on global, businesses are going to take a bigger hit. And then the second differentiation is going to come in the size of the organization.
Manufacturing, on the other hand, is out of all the sectors that you've tracked, is seeing a 10% growth in salaries. Now, put this into perspective for us. Are you seeing more upbeat kind of hiring in the manufacturing space?
Yes. So I think when COVID had hit, I think manufacturing had taken a big hit, and we had seen hiring and salary increase numbers also sort of come down. I think the last year and a half have been good for some of these core sectors. And when we look at manufacturing, we are talking about a lot of sectors which come under the larger range of manufacturing. Now, some of these are core manufacturing, auto, engineering sectors, which are seeing a strong clip at around about 10%. Auto is down from 10.6 to 9.9%, but it is still quite high, close to the double digit and higher than the India average. If you look at chemicals, it's same at around about 9.7%. Interestingly, life sciences, pharma, FMCG, FMCD, which are again core sectors largely driven by domestic demand and domestic spending, are doing reasonably well. So yes, hiring has gone up. These sectors are looking at much bigger plans, bigger investments, and we are seeing after almost 2-3 years salary increases being stable or actually going up in these core manufacturing sectors.
I just want to talk a bit about attrition rates. We saw attrition rates coming down in 2023 compared to 2022. I know it's difficult to maybe put a clear figure for what we could see in 2024, but are we going to see that trend continue? Lesser salaries or lesser salary hikes and maybe slower attrition as well?
So I think I'd put it into perspective. I think attrition was very high and it was artificially inflated because of what we saw in the tech sector and the great resignation and so on and so forth. Look, but if you look at the attrition numbers that we had sort of, been comfortable around between 2015 to 2019, it was hovering around about the 16.5% number. It's fallen from 21.4% to 18.7%. It's a big drop, no doubt, but it's still not close to the 16% number that we had seen in the previous year. Our sense is that eventually, over a period of time, as businesses stabilize, and unless we see some really big black swan event, the numbers will start to stabilize around the pre-COVID levels of around about 16.5%. And I think the same would go for salary increases. In the pre-COVID level era, before 2019, we had seen numbers close to 9.3, 9.5%. Then COVID happened, it dipped down to 6.5, went up to 10.5. Our sense is, again, it will stabilize around the 9.5% number. There will be more and more companies clustering around that. We will see volatility in some sectors, where there are pockets of variation, especially because of the global headwinds. But eventually, we see both attrition and salary increases start to stabilize around the numbers that were prevalent prior to 2020.
What about overall hiring trends, Roopank? How do you see that panning out? IT is going to see some rationalization on hiring. Those are the initial sort of sense, that's the initial sense coming in. Do you think hiring trends also might be a little muted?
Yes, I think for the next 2 quarters, I think companies are adopting a wait and watch approach. I think they are not going all out. And also, I think we are having a sectoral split. As I mentioned, in some of the services sectors, we are seeing, some bit of a wait and watch approach. But then some sectors in services like hospitality, which was struggling during COVID, are doing really well. They are hiring restaurants, QSR, even retail. There is enough attrition and enough hiring going across in these particular sectors. Engineering and manufacturing core sectors are hiring as well, and for large, important critical roles. Within the technology, IT consulting space, I think for the next 2 quarters, we are going to see some bit of cooling down. And possibly after maybe a couple of quarters, we will start see hiring pick up again.
All right. So you're going to see a bit of a cool down in hiring trends. Next 2 quarters at least, salaries are likely to grow at 9.5% on average, but you're seeing a moderation over the last couple of years. Thank you so much, Roopank, for joining us with all the analysis and insights on that very interesting report.